The neon lights of Outpost 7's most infamous dive bar, the Event Horizon, flickered pathetically as Jonas Iron Belt Graves pushed through the entrance. The pneumatic doors wheezed shut behind him, sealing him in with the station's most desperate collection of scum. The air tasted like cheap synthetic alcohol, desperation, and alien pheromones. This kind of place. Conversations died like an airlock breach as his boots thudded across the sticky floor. Every multi-eyed, multi-limbed patron tracked his movement. Their various appendages twitched toward concealed weapons. A Saeed information broker slithered into a back room, 3 of its eyes bulging in recognition. An Aronian mercenary's exoskeleton clicked nervously as it backed away from the bar. Jonas didn't bother looking around, didn't need to. He could feel the crosshairs on his back. He could practically hear the targeting systems locking onto his vital organs. After 15 years of making enemies across multiple star systems, you developed a sixth sense for impending violence. 1 billion credits. That's what his head was worth these days. Enough to buy a small moon or a medium-sized genocide. High enough to turn even the most honorable mercenary into a drooling bounty hunter. The Council had been raising the bounty steadily, 100,000 when he first went rogue, then 1 million after he blew up their black site on Centauri Prime, and now this. 1 billion. He must have really pissed them off with that stunt on the Chancellor's private yacht last month. He slid onto a stool at the bar, leather jacket creaking, his scarred face reflected in the polished metal counter, weather-beaten, stubbled, with eyes that had seen too much cosmic horror and decided to become some himself. The only thing that stood out about him was the absurdly oversized belt buckle gleaming against his waist, a giant silver monstrosity with what looked like far too many buttons, switches, and micro-displays. Terran whiskey, the real stuff, not that synthetic piss, Jonas said, his voice a gravelly rasp that carried in the sudden quiet. The 4-armed Ventaxian bartender slid a glass his way, tentacles trembling. You shouldn't have come here, Graves. Everyone knows your face. The Council broadcast it throughout the arm yesterday, said you slaughtered 60 elite guards at Proxima Station. 73, Jonas corrected, knocking back the drink in one gulp. They always lowball the numbers. He tapped the glass. Another drink slid his way. Behind him, chair legs scraped against metal flooring. Heavy footsteps approached, at least 7 sets, from the sounds of it. The whine of charging energy weapons filled the air. Jonas's fingers drifted to his belt buckle, tracing its familiar contours. A massive Corian warlord stepped into view. Kazor, if the wanted posters were accurate. 8 feet of purple-scaled muscle wrapped in trophy armor made from the bones of his victims. A specialized breathing apparatus covered the lower half of his reptilian face, hissing with each exhale. The alien's segmented jaw split into a predatory grin, revealing 3 rows of serrated teeth. Jonas greeted Kazor with a hiss of anticipation. 1 billion credits for a half-drunk, unarmed human? The Council must be desperate. His clawed hand rested on a particle disruptor, nearly as long as Jonas's entire body. Jonas didn't bother turning around. He studied his reflection in the dirty mirror behind the bar, remembering the time before he was Iron Belt Graves, back when he was just Lieutenant Jonas Graves, Terran Special Forces, with a spotless record and a naive belief in the system. Before he discovered what the Galactic Council really was, a corrupt congregation of interstellar crime lords masquerading as diplomats, unarmed. Jonas finally turned, smirking as he tapped his belt buckle. The embedded micro-reactor hummed to life, blue energy coursing through hidden circuits. "Buddy, I am an Onan extinction event." A bystander frowned with concern. "Z is a weapon. It's huge." Kazor raised a massive disruptor cannon. "Nothing personal, Iron Belt, but it's a lot of credits. If you cooperate, I might even let you keep one of your lungs as a souvenir." The bounty hunters flanked him, a nightmarish collection of the galaxy's most dangerous mercenaries spread out for better firing positions. Jonas glanced at his chronometer. "Funny, you have 3 seconds to live." The Quarian's laugh was cut short by the sound of Jonas's belt unclasping. The belt whipped free with a metallic shing, unfolding into a monofilament wire that glowed blue-hot. Jonas flicked his wrist, and the wire sliced through the air with a subtle whistle. Kaiser didn't even have time to blink. The wire passed through his neck like it was cutting through vacuum. For a moment, nothing happened. Just a thin red line appearing across the alien's thick throat, and then his head slowly slid off his shoulders. The cut cauterized instantly by the superheated wire. His eyes still blinked in confusion as his head hit the floor, the nervous system not yet registering that it was no longer attached to a body. "Did you know Quarians can live for 30 seconds after decapitation?" Jonas remarked casually to the head on the floor. "Well, that gives you plenty of time to watch what happens next." The body remained standing, dark purple blood bubbling from the cauterized stump, and then it toppled forward, crashing into a table of stunned mercenaries. The belt snapped back onto Jonas's waist as the remaining bounty hunters opened fire. Energy blasts scorched the walls around him, melting holes in the metal and igniting the synthetic upholstery. A plasma bolt grazed his shoulder, burning through his jacket but missing flesh, thanks to the micro-shield generators woven into the fabric, another addition to his growing arsenal. Jonas tapped his buckle twice, and it detached, unfolding with mechanical precision. Servos whirred, metal plates shifted, and within 2 seconds he was holding a plasma Gatling gun that hummed with murderous intent. The weapon had started as a standard-issue Terran military sidearm, but he'd modified it extensively, tripling the fire rate, adding a self-cooling plasma chamber and integrating a targeting system that linked to his ocular implants. "You ever wonder what it feels like to be minced meat?" Jonas asked as the weapon spun up. The gun roared to life, spitting out superheated plasma bolts at 10,000 rounds per minute. 3 bounty hunters simply ceased to exist, converted into pink mist and floating ash. A Quan razorback, notorious for its impenetrable hide, caught the full brunt of the barrage. The plasma bolts punched through its armored skin like it was tissue paper, boiling its organs inside its exoskeleton. It exploded from internal pressure, spraying caustic yellow fluids that dissolved everything they touched. What remained of them painted the walls in modern art patterns of various xenobiological fluids, greens, purples and blues, mixing with the more familiar red of a human mercenary who'd had the misfortune of standing too close to the Quan. An Arcosian mercenary in heavy battle armor leveled a railgun at Jonas from across the room. The weapon hummed as it charged, magnetic coils glowing blue. The weapon fired with a sonic boom that shattered nearby glasses, sending a hyper-velocity tungsten round straight for Jonas's head. Jonas whipped the belt around his wrist, pressing a hidden switch. A shimmering energy shield materialized, hexagonal panels of pure energy interlocking to form a barrier. The round struck it and hung there for a split second, suspended in a localized time dilation field. Another tech he'd liberated from a council research facility. The bullet hovered, spinning slowly, before reversing course, traveling back along its original trajectory at twice the speed. The tungsten round punched through the Arcosian's faceplate and back out of his skull, leaving a perfect hole that you could see the stars through. Brain matter and cybernetic implants splattered the wall behind him in a grotesque constellation. "Damn, buddy," Jonas chuckled, reattaching his belt. "You shot yourself. That's just embarrassing." A mantoid assassin leapt from the ceiling, 6 razor-sharp limbs extended for a killing blow. Jonas sidestepped the attack and grabbed one of the alien's arms, using its momentum to slam it into the floor hard enough to crack the metal plating. The insectoid creature chittered in pain as Jonas stomped on its thorax, the exoskeleton cracking like brittle plastic. The green ichor spurted in a high-pressure jet, coating Jonas's boots. "You know what they say about bugs on windshields," Jonas quipped, grinding his heel until the creature stopped moving. "You're just a bigger splat." More bounty hunters poured in from the back rooms, weapons at the ready. Jonas sighed dramatically, then pressed a series of buttons on his belt. The leather strap detached, segmenting into a dozen metal blades that hovered in the air, assembling into an autonomous buzzsaw drone. The micro-AI controlling it had been programmed with all of Jonas's combat experience, and none of his restraint. "I hope you like sushi," Jonas said as he casually pointed toward the incoming mob. The drone shot forward, blades spinning at molecular shredding speeds. It weaved through the crowd like a demented hornet, carving through alien flesh with surgical precision. Limbs, tentacles, and less identifiable appendages flew in all directions. A four-armed quill warrior tried to swat it away, only to have all four arms severed at the elbow in a single pass. The drone circled back, slicing through the alien's midsection and separating its torso from its legs. A Viken hive mind node leveled a sonic cannon at the drone. The weapon discharged, temporarily disrupting the drone's navigational system. The hive mind's victory was short-lived as Jonas flicked his wrist, sending a microdart from his sleeve into the creature's central nervous cluster. The dart expanded on impact, deploying barbed hooks that shredded the alien's brain from the inside out. The screams reached a crescendo, then faded away one by one into wet gurgles and death rattles. The metallic smell of alien blood, some acidic, some sweet, all mingling in a toxic cocktail, filled the air. A Vortigon assassin materialized behind Jonas, its active camouflage shimmering as it deactivated. Its phase blades, a weapon that could slice through the fabric of reality itself, aimed at Jonas's spine. Without looking, Jonas reached back and grabbed the alien's wrist, twisting until the blade plunged into its own chest. The weapon phased partially through the Vortigon's molecular structure, causing a catastrophic failure in its dimensional stabilizer. The creature imploded, collapsing into a singularity the size of a marble before winking out of existence. "Cloaking tech," Jonas tutted, dusting off his hands where the alien had been. "Old school. Respect that." He tapped his belt buckle again, and it sprayed a cone of liquid nitrogen, flash-freezing 3 charging brutes. The aliens were caught mid-stride, their expressions of rage preserved in perfect crystalline detail. Jonas casually walked over and flicked one of them on the forehead. The alien shattered into 1,000 crystalline pieces, its frozen organs turning to powder upon impact with the floor. "Chill out," he muttered before kicking the second frozen mercenary. The alien's torso separated from its legs, crashing into the ground and breaking into chunks of frozen meat and shattered exoskeleton. By the time the slaughter ended, the bar looked like an abattoir designed by a psychopath with a geometry fetish. Bodies were arranged in impossible angles, some still twitching, others in too many pieces to twitch at all. Blood of various colors dripped from the ceiling, pooling in rainbow puddles on the floor. The smell was indescribable, a mixture of burnt flesh, ruptured alien organs, and discharged energy weapons. Jonas casually walked back to the bar, sat down, and lit a cigarette off a nearby flaming corpse, the remains of a Piran mercenary whose internal combustion had ignited when Jonas shot its methane sac. "I'll have another drink," he told the trembling bartender, who'd wisely hidden behind the counter. "Make it double. Killing makes me thirsty." The bartender, a grizzled Ventaxian who'd seen his share of bar fights but nothing like this, poured Jonas another whiskey with a four-armed tremble. Glass clinked against the bottle as his tentacles shook involuntarily. "What the hell did you do to get a 1,000,000,000 credit bounty?" the bartender asked, eyes darting to the emergency beacon he couldn't quite reach beneath the counter. Jonas caught the look and casually flicked his belt. A tiny blade shot out, severing the wire to the beacon with surgical precision. "That's a long story," Jonas sighed, taking a deep drag from his cigarette. The ember glowed bright orange in the dimly lit bar. For the first time, the humor vanished from his eyes, replaced by something cold and ancient. "I used to be a soldier, Terran Special Forces. The best of the best." He knocked back his drink, the liquid burning a path down his throat that felt almost like emotion. "Led the siege of Terrath 9 during the border wars. We were supposed to broker peace with the Galactic Council. Instead, we found evidence that they were funding slavers, whole breeding colonies, men, women, children, being sold like livestock to the highest bidders, breeding farms, torture chambers, the kind of shit that makes even a hardened soldier puke his guts out." Jonas's knuckles whitened around his glass. "I found a processing facility. Humans packed in cages tagged like cattle. They were harvesting organs, keeping the donors alive for multiple extractions." His voice dropped to a whisper. "There was a children's section." He poured himself another drink with a hand that wasn't quite steady. "I reported back. Command told me to stand down. Said it was politically sensitive. Bureaucrats speak for we don't give a fuck about those people. They're less important than our trade agreements." He laughed, but it was hollow. "So my squad went rogue. Elite unit, 12 of us. We hit slaver outposts. We freed colonies, burned council ships." "You call those terrorists?" the bartender said, looking around at the carnage. "Where are they now?" "Dead." Jonas's voice was flat. "Crews took a plasma bolt, saving refugees on Deimos. Sasha bled out in my arms after we blew the Council's black site prison on Vega Prime. Pike? Well, he went down fighting, took out an entire slaver cruiser with him. Javen, our tech expert, got captured. They sent us his eyes, and then his fingers, and then his head, and the others died one by one, until it was just me." Jonas ran a finger along his belt. "Last stand was on Jesus Station. Mining colony converted to a secret weapons lab. We'd tracked the slaver network to its source, a council member named Drake. The evidence was there. We just needed to extract it." He tapped his belt buckle. "We weren't prepared. They had elite guards, experimental weapons. We were pinned down in the station's core, cut off from our ship. My squad leader, Commander Yuri Volkov, took a disintegrator round to the chest." Jonas's eyes grew distant. "Before he died, he gave me his belt. Standard issue equipment, but Yuri had modified it. Hidden compartment containing a quantum encrypted data stick. "Get this out," he told me. "Make them pay." The bartender's eye stalks twitched in understanding. "So that's where it all started. The belt." Jonas nodded. "I was cornered, outnumbered 50 to 1, spotted a maintenance shaft leading to the station's heart, the foundry. I jumped in, straight into the molten metal processing channels. Should have died." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing an arm covered in synthetic skin that didn't quite match the rest of him. "Experimental thermal shield in Yuri's belt saved me, activated automatically. I still got cooked, but not completely. Woke up floating in a solidification chamber, half my body replaced with cybernetics. Belt was partially fused to my waist from the heat." Jonas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The irony wasn't lost on me. Iron belt graves. Seems fitting." He finished his drink. "After that, I started modifying it. Each time I lost someone, I added a feature. Alex's plasma cutter became the monofilament wire, Sasha's shield generator, Cruz's targeting system, pieces of them all. This belt isn't just a weapon, it's a memorial." He tapped his belt. "Modified my gear after each loss, added a piece of them to it. This belt, It's all that's left of my team, my family. The bartender's expression softened. So you're not just some bloodthirsty killer? Jonas raised an eyebrow. Oh, I absolutely am. Only difference is I only kill the right bastards. The station's alarm suddenly blared to life. Red emergency lights bathed the bloody bar in crimson. The station's AI voice echoed through the hidden speakers. Attention, attention. Galactic enforcement fleet detected. Approach vector 090. Station lockdown initiated. All citizens must report to designated safety zones. This is not a drill. Jonas cursed, checking his chronometer. Took 'em 15 minutes. I'm getting faster. The bartender ducked as the station shook violently, glasses falling from shelves and shattering. That's a Dread-class weapon signature. They brought an entire battle fleet. Through the viewport, Jonas could see them. A fleet of Council enforcement vessels, led by a massive dreadnought, its silhouette blotting out the stars. Weapon ports glowed with charged energy. Smaller attack craft swarmed around it like angry insects. For little old me, Jonas grinned, finishing his drink. I'm flattered. He stood, reattaching his various belt components with practiced efficiency. Each piece clicked into place, the whole assembly humming with barely contained energy. Well, guess a better exit would have been starting with this. He tossed a credit chip on the counter. Sorry about the bar. The bartender shrugged. Don't worry, I got good insurance. He paused, then added, those slavers, they took my clutchmates, harvested them for their regenerative organs. I hope you make the Council bleed. Jonas nodded. That's the plan. He checked his weapon systems. You might want to hide in the freezer. Things are about to get absolutely batshit. The ceiling exploded inward as breaching pods punched through the station's hull. Armored Galactic enforcers repelled down on magnetic lines, weapons already firing through the newly created skylight. Jonas could see the looming silhouette of a Council dreadnought, its weapon ports glowing with charged energy. Overkill, Jonas muttered appreciatively. I love it when they bring overkill. The first wave of enforcers landed, their heavy combat boots crunching on debris. Elite troops in black armor, faceplates obscuring any hint of species or individuality. Their weapons, Tarian plasma repeaters, were military-grade hardware designed to punch through starship armor. Jonas ducked behind the bar as they opened fire. The counter disintegrated under the barrage, liquor bottles exploding in colorful geysers. He reached for his belt, detaching a section that transformed into a compact grenade. He lobbed it over the remains of the counter without looking. Fire in the hole, he called cheerfully. The grenade detonated with a thunderous boom, releasing a cloud of microscopic shrapnel. The cloud hung in the air for a millisecond before accelerating in all directions, driven by a magnetic pulse. 5 enforcers went down, their armor punctured in thousands of places, blood seeping through the tiny holes like mist from a sprinkler. A massive warbot crashed through the far wall, bipedal and bristling with enough firepower to level a small city. 12 feet tall, its frame constructed of neo-steel and composite ceramics. Its optical sensors locked onto Jonas, and its voice boomed through external speakers. Jonas Graves. By order of the Galactic Council, you are sentenced to immediate termination. The warbot's shoulder-mounted cannon swiveled toward him. Jonas rolled behind an overturned table as the bot unleashed a torrent of high-explosive rounds, turning his previous cover into splinters. Jonas pressed his belt buckle, and a hidden compartment in his boot sprang open, extending a compact railgun, a souvenir from a Council Black Ops team he'd encountered on Tartis. The weapon was small but devastating, designed to pierce the heaviest armor at close range. It kicked upward, the railgun firing with enough force to stagger him backward. The hypervelocity round punched through the warbot's armor plating like it was cardboard, penetrating its sensor processor. The machine froze momentarily, and then its head exploded in a shower of sparks and molten steel. Secondary explosions cascaded through its chassis as its ammunition cooked off inside its weapon systems. The bot collapsed, crushing 2 more enforcers beneath its massive frame. "Told you, boys," Jonas called out to the stunned enforcers rappelling in. "I come accessorized." An enforcer in heavy armor aimed a disruptor cannon at Jonas. The weapon began to glow with unstable energy, the air around its barrel distorting as space-time warped. These weapons were banned in civilized space. They didn't just kill, they erased their targets from existence, scattering their atomic structure across multiple dimensions. Jonas snapped his fingers, and his belt extended into a gravity whip. The weapon looked simple, a leather cord with a metal tip, but it contained technology stolen from the Archon civilization, capable of manipulating localized gravitational fields. He flicked it downward, the gravitational tether latching onto the enforcer's chest plate. With a yank, he pulled the alien forward, directly into the bar counter. The impact cracked the reinforced metal counter and the enforcer's exoskeleton in equal measure. The alien's helmet shattered, revealing a draconid face contorted in agony, green blood oozing from its nostrils and ear canals as internal hemorrhaging began. Jonas stomped on the alien's exposed head. The skull collapsed under his boot with a wet crunch, brain matter exploding and splattering across the floor in a slick green puddle. Outside, the dreadnought's main cannon powered up, a white-hot glow signaling imminent destruction. The station's structural integrity alarms wailed in panic. "They're gonna vaporize the whole station," the bartender yelled from behind an overturned table. Jonas reached for his belt buckle, popping open a hidden compartment. He withdrew a small, pulsing black sphere, technology so advanced it bordered on the mystical. "We found it in a derelict vessel beyond the outer rim, the sole survivor of an expedition that had encountered something." "Wormhole grenade," he explained to a wide-eyed enforcer who'd frozen mid-attack. "Creates a temporal singularity. Physics gets, creative." He activated the grenade and casually tossed it through the hole in the ceiling. The sphere hung in space for a moment and then collapsed in on itself. The fabric of reality tore open, creating a ravenous black void that seemed to devour light itself. The dreadnought's front half was yanked upward toward the micro-black hole, metal screaming as it stretched and twisted like taffy. Support ships were sucked into the void like dust in a vacuum. The wormhole pulsed once, twice, expanding and contracting with each beat, swallowing more ship debris and even the station's communication array, and then it collapsed with a thunderclap that shook the entire station, taking half the fleet with it into whatever dimension lay beyond. More enforcers poured in, filling the room with plasma fire. Jonas dove behind the bar, bullets and energy blasts shredding everything around him. A bolt caught him in the side, burning through his jacket and searing the flesh underneath. He grimaced, applying a quick seal patch from his pocket. "Time to go," he muttered, pressing a concealed button on his belt. Rocket thrusters extended from both sides, humming with barely contained energy. The technology was experimental, stolen from a council research facility specializing in rapid deployment systems for deep space operators. Jonas saluted the bartender. "Drinks are good, service is excellent, 5 stars. He triggered the thrusters, and they launched him upward through the hole in the ceiling, out into the void of space. His belt automatically deployed an emergency force field that kept the vacuum at bay as he rocketed toward the station's docking bay, Disrenia trailing fire and smoke like a comet. 3 enforcer interceptors spotted him above and gave chase, energy weapons lancing through the darkness. Jonas weaved between them, using the belt's thrusters to execute maneuvers no ship could match. One pursuer overcompensated, crashing into a communications array in a spectacular explosion. Inside the docking bay, a sleek interceptor sat unguarded, its pilots having joined the hunt for him. The ship, a Talon-class scout vessel, was small but notoriously fast, perfect for a quick escape. Jonas landed on its hull, his belt extending a multi-tool that hacked the ship's security in seconds. The airlock popped open and he slipped inside as enforcers flooded the hangar, weapons blazing. As he strapped into the pilot seat, a stray shot punched through the viewport, narrowly missing his head. The hull began to depressurize, the cabin alarms blaring. Jonas slammed his palm on the emergency seal button, and a transparent polymer foam expanded to fill the breach. "That was my favorite ear," he muttered, touching a small cut where the shot had grazed him. The ship roared to life, repulsors blasting away pursuing officers. Several were caught in the exhaust, their bodies incinerated instantly by the superheated plasma. "Ladies, gentlemen, and unclassified biological marvels," Jonas announced over the station's comm system as the ship lifted off. "It's been a pleasure making your acquaintance. And by pleasure, I mean bloodbath." The interceptor shot out of the hangar like a bullet, weaving through debris and surviving enforcement vessels. The ship's navigation computer blared warnings as targeting systems locked on. Jonas punched in hyperspace coordinates with one hand while his other tapped his belt. A pulse of electromagnetic energy shot outward, scrambling the pursuer's targeting systems. Ships veered wildly, some colliding with each other in spectacular fireballs. The stars stretched into lines as the stolen ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the graveyard of twisted metal and broken bodies. And in the quiet of hyperspace, a transmission crackled through the ship's communication system. "Attention all Galactic citizens. Jonas Graves is still at large. Do not approach. He is considered extremely armed and dangerous. Repeat, do not." Jonas cut the transmission off with a smirk. He unclasped his belt, laying it carefully on the console beside him. The device had saved his life countless times, evolved from a simple piece of military gear into something legendary, something feared across the galaxy. He traced the scars along its surface, thinking of all the blood it had spilled, all the lives it had taken, all the comrades it memorialized. "It's just you and me now, old friend," he murmured to it. "We still got work to do." He pulled up a star chart, searching for his next target. The data Yuri had given him all those years ago was still yielding results: names, locations, connections, a web of corruption that stretched across the galaxy with the Council at its center. Somewhere in the galaxy, a slaver ship was about to have a very bad day. The manifest showed a fresh cargo of human colonists from the outer rim. Jonas set course to intercept, and somewhere a bounty hunter named Orion loaded a rifle, thinking they were good enough to collect that billion-credit bounty. They'd heard the stories about Iron Belt, but dismissed them as exaggerations. No one man could be that dangerous. They weren't the first to make that mistake. They wouldn't be the last. They just didn't know it yet.